Douglas Daniel Clark was born on March 10, 1948, in North Middleton, Pennsylvania. From the outside, his life began with all the promise of privilege. His father, Franklin Clark, was a respected naval intelligence officer, a man of discipline and ambition. Doug was the third of 5 children, and like many military brats, he grew up constantly on the move. By the time he was a teenager, he claimed to have lived in 37 countries: Geneva, Switzerland, the Marshall Islands, India. Home was a fleeting concept. He attended the International School of Geneva, an elite institution nestled in the heart of Europe. But while he might have seemed like a well-traveled, privileged young man, darkness was already stirring beneath the surface. He began secretly filming sexual encounters with female classmates, boasting about conquests they never consented to. It was there, amidst the polished hallways of one of the world's most respected schools, that Clark's fantasies took a disturbing turn toward rape, mutilation, and death. Eventually, he was expelled. His academic future, like his moral compass, had begun to collapse. In 1967, Clark graduated from Culver Military Academy in Indiana, another prestigious institution that emphasized order and control. That same year, he enlisted in the United States Air Force. It was a logical step for a young man raised in a world of military hierarchy. But Clark never saw combat. He was stationed in Colorado and later in Ohio. By 1970, he was discharged. The reasons remain unclear, but his pattern of instability had only begun. Over the next decade, he drifted from job to job, city to city. He married in 1972, divorced 4 years later, and eventually settled in Los Angeles. On paper, he was respectable, working as a steam plant operator for the Department of Water and Power. But coworkers described him as erratic and violent. He drank heavily, made threats, and showed up less and less. By 1980, he was fired. Again. It was in the bars of West Hollywood where Doug Clark found his true comfort zone. He wasn't looking for friends. He was looking for prey. Middle-aged women with tired smiles, girls on the edge of homelessness. He used charm, sex, and pity to get what he wanted: money, attention, control. And then he met Carol Bundy. It was Christmas Day, 1979. Bundy, a 36-year-old nurse, had recently escaped an abusive marriage. She was lonely, vulnerable, eager to be loved. Clark saw it all instantly. What followed was not love, it was combustion. Their relationship quickly devolved into one of shared perversions and control. He told her he wanted to kill during sex. She didn't walk away. She helped him buy guns, and the killings began. In the summer of 1980, Doug Clark's fantasies began to take a terrifying form. His first known victims were 2 teenage girls, Gina Moreno, 15, and Cynthia Chandler, 16, who disappeared on June 11th after leaving Huntington Beach. Clark later described how he had picked them up along the Sunset Strip, threatened them, and then committed the crimes that would mark the beginning of a long and horrific trail. The next day, their bodies were found near Griffith Park, not far from the Ventura Freeway. Clark shared the details with Bundy. Instead of fear or regret, he expressed something closer to pride. Bundy, disturbed but still under his influence, made a vague call to police, sharing partial information but refusing to name him. Clark reassured her. If either of them were caught, he would take the fall, but he didn't stop. On June 24th, he met 2 women on the same strip, Karen Jones and Exie Wilson. Later that day, Karen's body was discovered near a steakhouse in Burbank. The other victim had been subjected to further indignities. Her remains were discovered in Studio City, while something even more disturbing had been taken and hidden. Clark brought it home, stored it in the refrigerator, and treated it as a possession. Bundy would later admit that she helped dress it up in makeup, calling it fun, in a statement that left investigators speechless. Eventually, they placed the remains in a wooden box and left it in a Hollywood alley. It was found on June 27th. Just a few days later, on June 30th, a group of hikers came across the mummified remains of a young woman near Sylmar. She was later identified as Marnette Carey Comer, a 17-year-old from Sacramento who had gone missing weeks earlier. As with the others, the pattern was the same. Then on August 5th, the story took a sharp turn. Carol Bundy attended a country music performance by her former partner, John Murray. After the show, she confided in him about what she and Clark had done. Alarmed, Murray warned that he might go to the authorities. Fearing exposure, Bundy acted violently. What followed was disorganized and panicked. Evidence was left behind, and the pressure of what she'd done overwhelmed her. 2 days later, she confessed everything to coworkers. They contacted the police. On August 11th, Carol Bundy was arrested. By the end of that day, Doug Clark had joined her in custody. When the police arrested Carol Bundy on August 11th, 1980, they weren't fully prepared for what she would reveal. Over the course of several interviews, she outlined a chilling sequence of crimes, naming Doug Clark as the driving force. Her descriptions were precise, personal, and deeply disturbing. Later that same day, police arrested Clark. At first, he denied everything, but physical evidence began to pile up. At his workplace, investigators discovered 2 hidden handguns, both .25 caliber pistols, just as Bundy had described. Forensic analysis confirmed that bullets recovered from multiple victims matched the weapons. Traces of blood and other materials were also found in his car and garage. Still, Clark maintained his innocence. In the months that followed, he became a disruptive force in court. He fired his attorneys, accused the police of misconduct, and demanded to represent himself. Eventually, he was granted limited access to the law library and used it obsessively, filing appeals, motions, and requests in an attempt to delay the trial. He claimed that Bundy was the real killer, that she had manipulated him, that he was merely a scapegoat. The prosecution disagreed. They presented a pattern of behavior. Witnesses testified about Clark's obsession with violence and control. Bundy, now a key witness, told the court about Clark's fantasies and how they gradually turned into reality. She admitted her own involvement, but made it clear that Clark was the one who had planned the killings. Clark's courtroom behavior didn't help his case. He insulted the judge, interrupted proceedings. At times, his outbursts made it difficult to continue the trial. One of his former lawyers, Maxwell Keith, later described Clark as one of the most difficult clients he had ever encountered, stating that communication was nearly impossible. Despite Clark's protests, the trial moved forward. In early 1983, the jury found him guilty of 6 murders. On February 16th, he was sentenced to death. According to California law, all death penalty cases are subject to automatic appeal. But in 1992, his sentence was upheld. Meanwhile, Carol Bundy accepted a plea deal. In exchange for her cooperation, she was sentenced to 52 years to life. She died in prison in 2003. Doug Clark would spend the next 4 decades on death row in San Quentin State Prison, and he never stopped claiming he was innocent. For over 40 years, Doug Clark sat on death row at San Quentin. His name became a footnote in the dark history of American crime, remembered by some, forgotten by most. But inside the prison walls, he remained active. He read obsessively, filed legal motions, and granted occasional interviews where he repeated the same refrain. I didn't do it. He said he had been framed, that the evidence was circumstantial, that Carol Bundy had lied to save herself. In one of his interviews during the 1990s, he accused the court of silencing his witnesses and claimed that his public defenders had failed him completely. He said the media had turned him into a monster, and the system had simply gone along with the story. But others, including investigators and psychiatrists who had observed him, saw a man with deep psychological fractures. A forensic psychiatrist diagnosed him with antisocial personality disorder, a condition often associated with lack of empathy, manipulative behavior, and a disregard for consequences. Clark didn't care. He played chess and bridge with other inmates, including infamous killers like Randy Kraft and Lawrence Bittaker. He learned prison routines. He adjusted. By the early 2000s, his appeals had been exhausted. The state had no plans to carry out his execution, and Clark seemed content to spend his life behind bars, continuing to fight the verdict in letters and filings. He rarely expressed remorse, only outrage. In 2015, journalists visited San Quentin and interviewed Clark. Over 35 years had passed, but he remained firm. He denied everything. He criticized the trial, the evidence, and especially Carol Bundy. He still called her a liar. He spoke not with fear, but with defiance, as if the world still owed him an apology. In his final years, Clark's health declined. He was moved from San Quentin to a nearby hospital, where he died of cardiovascular disease on October 11, 2023. He was 75 years old. At the time of his death, he had spent more than 43 years in custody. He never expressed public regret. And the full truth, and whether entirely as Bundy described or something darker, more complicated, remains lost somewhere between two twisted minds.